My name is Flower Lewis, and I am currently a registered nurse in the ICU, and I also teach the CBRF classes. What we're going to talk about in fire safety today is understanding the nature of a fire, recognizing fire hazards, learning about early warning systems such as smoke detectors, sprinklers, things of that nature, understanding the use of fire extinguishers, focusing on the evacuation needs of residents, following the CBRF emergency and disaster plan, as well as how to respond well in an emergency. Every person at an assisted living facility plays a role in helping residents remain safe during an emergency. Understanding the nature of fire is an important first step. It's also important to know that a room can become completely engulfed in flames in 2 minutes. Many people overestimate the time it takes to get out of a fire. Why is it so important to know how to react in a fire emergency in a CBRF? Because our residents are frail, elderly, they have physical disabilities, mental disabilities, so this is why it's important to know how to react. About a fire, a chemical reaction. The ancient Greeks believed that a fire was one of 4 basic elements that made up all things in the universe. In some cultures, fire is considered a sacred substance that gives life or power. What causes a fire? What I want you guys to know is that there are 4 components needed to produce and maintain fire. You need fuel, heat, oxygen, and the uninhibited chain reaction between them. How do you stop a fire? You need to eliminate one of the following components. Either cool the burning material, exclude the oxygen, remove the fuel, or break the chemical reaction. Breaking the chemical reaction is something like using a fire extinguisher. Products of combustion. Flame and smoke are the main products of combustion, and smoke can become fire. Carbon monoxide is also another product of combustion. Most fire fatalities are caused by smoke inhalation, not from fire itself. As I said before, it can take only 2 minutes for a building to become completely engulfed in flames and dense black smoke. Some people make the mistake of thinking they can find their way in a smoke-filled room. However, smoke can quickly affect breathing and disorient a person, making escape more difficult. Transfers of heat. Heat can be transferred in one of 3 ways: conduction, convection, or radiation. Conduction is the transfer of heat through a material. It requires the direct contact of 2 bodies such as heat and metal. Convection is the flow of fluid or gas from hot areas to cooler areas. The heated air is less dense and rises, while cool air descends. And radiation involves heat traveling via electromagnetic waves without objects or gases carrying it along. So no materials or objects are needed for heat to transfer via radiation. Stages of a fire. There are 4 stages of a fire: ignition, growth, fully developed, and decay. Ignition, fuel, oxygen, and heat join together in a constant chemical reaction. The only oxygen level is near normal. The smoke and gases begin to rise. Only at this early stage is a fire extinguisher likely to control the fire. Growth. With the initial flame as a heat source, additional fuel ignites and the fire grows. Convection and radiation ignite more surfaces. The size of the fire increases and the plume reaches the ceiling. Hot gases collecting at the ceiling transfer heat, allowing all fuels in a room to come closer to their ignition temperature at the same time. During this time, the temperature continues to rise and the oxygen levels drop. We normally breathe oxygen at room air at 21%, so anything below that is considered unbreathable. The next stage of a fire is fully developed. The fire has spread over much, if not all, the available fuel. The oxygen temperatures reach their peak, typically over 1300 degrees. The oxygen is consumed rapidly and is now below 15%. So therefore, a fully developed fire is no longer breathable. Decay or burnout is the last stage of a fire. Once a fire has consumed all the available fuel, the temperature of the fire decreases and the fire becomes less intense. This is called the decay or burnout. I want you guys to know that not every fire will go through every stage. It depends on when it's put out, on which stages it will go through. Special circumstances of a fire. There are two special circumstances. There's flashover and backdraft. Flashover is the sudden ignition of everything in the room. Hot gases rise to the ceiling and spread across to the walls. Heat radiates downward and builds up until all burnable items reach their ignition temperatures and burst into flames. A good example of flashover would be if you have, say, a dry Christmas tree, real Christmas tree, with lights on it, and because it's so dry, can catch fire. Within, I'll say, 10 seconds, the fire will be up to the ceiling, crossing all the way over, and that room will be completely engulfed in flames. The other special circumstance of a fire would be backdraft. It's an explosion that occurs when oxygen is introduced into a room full of hot gases. This happens when a fire burning in a confined area consumes all the oxygen in that area. The visible flames disappear. Solid fuel smolder and hot, flammable gases fill the room. The temperature increases, the gas expands, and pressure builds, pulsing against doors and windows. So a good example of backdraft would be, let's say you got a fire smoldering sort of in a room. The door is closed. It consumed all the oxygen. Now let's say a window breaks. An outdoor window breaks. The fire will go to that window like a big fireball because it wants to consume all of that oxygen. All right, now we have classifications of fires. Classifications of fires are exactly the same as types of fire extinguishers. So we have Class A fires. They involve ordinary combustibles, burnable materials such as wood, cloth, paper, rubber. They usually leave an ash. Trash is another good class. Class A fires are generally put out with water. Okay, so like I said, exactly the same as types of fire extinguishers. So if a fire extinguisher has an A on it, you can use it for Class A fires. Class B fires involve flammable liquids and combustible liquids. These would include things such as like oil-based paints, solvents, nail polish remover, WD-40, alcohol. These fires are not always put out with water, so you need to make sure you are using the correct kind of fire extinguisher. Class C fires are those that occur because of electrical equipment. So anything electrical, anything that has an outlet or a fuse box can be considered a Class C fire. Now, of course, you cannot use water on Class C fires because water conducts electricity. So again, make sure you're using the right type of fire extinguisher. Class D fires are considered combustible metals, like the elemental metals, magnesium, chromium, lithium, potassium, titanium. These are not likely to be seen in the CBRF. Mostly they're seen in like car metals and things like that, so you're probably not going to be encountering any of these types of fires. They're usually put out with salt or salt-type substances. Class K fires generally involve vegetable oils, animal oils, or fats in cooking appliances. This classification is for commercial kitchens. Very large CBRFs would have these types of materials and not likely to be seen otherwise. Okay, now let's review what we just talked about. Classifications of fires that are most likely to be seen in CBRFs. Class A fires involve ordinary combustibles, paper, wood, cloth. Think about the residents' bedrooms. They've got mattresses, they've got curtains, they've got wooden dressers. Trash. Class B fires are all flammable liquids, solvents, nail polish remover, let's say alcohol, WD-40, things like that. And then Class C fires, which can also be seen in CBRFs, would be anything electrical with a cord or with a fuse. Okay, prevention. Most fire deaths occur in the very place where we feel safest, our own homes. Home fires often happen at night when people are sleeping. Most people who die in fires die from smoke inhalation, not burns. The specific causes of fires: kitchens and cooking would be number one. They pose a high risk of fire from unattended ovens, stoves, microwaves, or other appliances. Carelessness is also a factor in the potential for a fire. This could include spilling oil on a burner, placing a hot pad too close to a heat source, or forgetting to turn off the stove. Dirty or poorly maintained range hoods can also be a source of fires. Cooking fires are the leading cause of home fires and home fire injuries. Smoking is the leading cause of fire fatalities when people fall asleep while smoking or handling smoking materials carelessly. Most CBRFs should have a no smoking policy with a designated outdoor smoking area. And there should never be oxygen tanks when people are smoking. Electrical fires may result from the improper use of extension cords or circuits that are overloaded. Cords and wires should never be placed under rugs or extend beyond the room of origin. Heating systems such as space heaters, what I want you guys to remember for this is basically space heaters are not allowed in CBRFs. Burning candles can also pose fire risk, especially when they're left unattended. It's another leading cause of fires. Battery-operated candles are preferred. Bedrooms are also causes of fires because, again, as I said, they have many combustible materials within them. Mattresses, clothing, bedding, things of this nature. And then I also just want you to know that clothes dryers can also pose as fire hazards when the lint builds up especially. All right, we're going to move on to some of the specific causes in Wisconsin assisted living facilities. There were a reported 21 fires in assisted livings last year. There were no injuries or deaths, but the leading causes were smoking or wastebaskets, kitchens, occupant arson, electrical, and finally mechanical or construction. Who is at risk? Well, our residents are at risk. And why are they at risk? They're at risk because they could possibly have dementia and they may not understand the need to evacuate if there were an emergency. They could be with physical disabilities and just are not able to physically leave the facility if there was a fire. They could have hearing or vision impairments and may not hear or see an alarm. They could also have developmental disabilities and may become uncomfortable with a change in routine and may perhaps run from the alarm or hide in their room or something of that nature. Now we're going to get into early warning systems and equipment. Smoke alarms are the most popular. A smoke detector sounds an alarm when the device detects a certain level of smoke in a particular area. There's two different types of smoke alarms. There are photoelectric and ionization alarms. An ionization alarm is the one that has an alarm and there's a little bit of fluid in a little glass container, and basically when the flames of the fire hit that, it will break and set off the alarm. So this type of alarm would be more responsive to, say, a high flaming fire. The other type of alarm is an ionization alarm. Now this alarm has like a little light beam going through it, and when that light beam is crossed, the alarm is set off. So this type of alarm would be more responsive to, say, a smoking fire. It's also more likely to have false alarms because dust and air particles can go through as well. Locally versus externally monitored smoke alarms. This means, is the alarm, if you set the alarm, is your facility staff going to be aware of it, or is there a system in place where the fire department is automatically notified? Most facilities have it where when the alarm goes off, the fire department is automatically notified. In smaller facilities, this may not be true. Interconnected systems also has to do with smoke alarms, and this basically means when one alarm goes off, they all go off. And just about every single CBRF will have an interconnected system. Care and maintenance for smoke alarms. Basically, if an alarm occurs, that within 10 days, that alarm needs to be checked. And if it's not working properly, it needs to be replaced within 5 days. So, the location of smoke detectors. A smoke detector is located at the top of every open stairway, on the hallway side of every enclosed stairway on each floor level, spaced not more than 30 feet apart in corridors, in each common room, living room, dining room, family room, each resident bedroom, in all non-resident living areas, except the furnace, bathroom, kitchen, and laundry room. Heat detectors. A heat detector is a device that responds to a change in temperature rather than smoke or flames. A rate of rise heat detector will sound an alarm if the temperature rises too rapidly in a certain amount of time. The location of heat detectors are basically going to be everywhere where smoke could be natural, but it may not necessarily be a fire, such as the kitchen. Back in the day, what used to happen is people would have smoke alarms in their kitchens, and when they burned their microwave popcorn or something, the smoke alarm would go off. Well, now we put a heat detector in the kitchen, and the alarm will not go off unless it reaches a certain temperature, so you can burn that microwave popcorn and be okay. The heat detector will be aware of that. The other locations for them would be like a furnace room or a laundry room or, say, an attached garage. Care and maintenance for heat detectors is exactly the same as for smoke detectors. If there's been a fire, it needs to be checked within 10 days, and if it's malfunctioning, replaced within 5. Manual pull stations. Manual pull stations are those little red, basically boxes that you can kind of pull down. You see them in a lot of schools, and an alarm will go off. Now, what you need to know about manual pull stations is that if you set one of those off, you need to know whether you need to call the fire department or if they are automatically notified. It could be either way. So, whether you have to call the fire department or not, you need to get the fire department there to manually reset those for the next use. Sprinkler systems. A fire sprinkler system is a network of piping filled with water under pressure, and it is installed behind the walls and ceilings. Just like a heat detector, a sprinkler system responds to a change in temperature. And it's also good to know about sprinkler systems that when one goes off, they don't all go off, like in the movies. If the fire is over here and the sprinkler system is right above it, that one will go off. If the fire grows, another sprinkler will go off, and so on and so forth. CBRF sprinkler system requirements. A sprinkler system is required if any resident has an evacuation time of 4 or more minutes, with or without assistance. When a CBRF has 16 or more residents, and based on the construction type and classification of the facility. Sprinkler system locations. The entrance foyers, every bedroom or apartment, any habitable living area, every corridor, and at the top of each linen or trash chute. Care and maintenance for sprinkler systems. They must be inspected, maintained, and tested at least annually. The CBRF must keep the records for at least 2 years. And sprinkler heads must be kept free and unobstructed. So you can't hang your Christmas decorations from your sprinkler heads, for example. Okay, carbon monoxide detectors. Carbon monoxide is often called the silent killer because it is an invisible, odorless, colorless, poisonous gas created when fuels such as gasoline, wood, coal, or natural gas burn incompletely. Carbon monoxide is the #1 cause of accidental poisoning deaths in the United States, claiming about 500 lives each year and sending about 15,000 people for treatment. Toxic carbon monoxide levels can occur suddenly or accumulate slowly over time. In a CBRF, heating and cooking equipment that burn fuel can be sources of carbon monoxide, such as anything that has the word gas in front of it, gas dryer, gas stove, things of that nature. Never ignore an alarm carbon monoxide detector. If you hear the alarm, you need to get outdoors immediately and then call for help. Okay, now we have fire extinguishers. Types of fire extinguishers. As I previously said, the types of fire extinguishers are the exact same as the classes of fires. So what we have here is, let me grab my fire extinguisher. So now we have our fire extinguisher here. And as you can see on here, we've got letters A, B, and C, which directly correlate to the classes of fires. So A-type fires for ordinary combustibles such as paper and wood, B-type fires for flammable liquids, and C-type fires for electrical. So this fire extinguisher can be used for any one of those things. It also has a nice little set of pictures on here for us as well. Okay, so as I previously said, never use water or a Class A extinguisher to extinguish flammable liquids. And never use water to extinguish an electrical fire. Fire extinguishers and CBRFs. There is a minimum grade that must be had, 2A 10BC, which is a little bit technical, but that's what most fire extinguishers are in CBRFs. The placement and mounting of fire extinguishers. They should be on each floor of a CBRF, and they should also be mounted to a wall. They should not be locked in a cabinet or inaccessible by all staff. They should not be more than 75 feet apart. They should not be tied down. And the extinguisher on floor level should be near the kitchen. One more note is that fire blankets also serve as fire safety equipment. Usually they work by smothering the oxygen, generally seen with, say, firefighters or something of that nature. All right, so when you guys get back to your facilities, make sure you locate all of this equipment, the sprinklers, the smoke alarms, heat detectors, and fire extinguishers. And then it's also good to know if you need to call the fire department if you pull an alarm, or if the fire department is automatically notified. Special requirements for persons with impaired hearing or vision. If any resident with impaired hearing or vision is unable to detect or respond to a fire emergency, the CBRF must ensure that an appropriate audio, visual, or vibrating notification alarm is installed in the resident's bedroom, in or near a living room, in an apartment, and in each common area used by the resident. The sensory impairment of the resident must be noted in the resident's record and communicated to all employees within 3 days of admission. Let's talk about evacuation requirements. How is your CBRF licensed? First of all, there is the size of the facility. Is it small, medium, or large? Small facilities contain 5 to 8 residents. Medium facilities contain 9 to 20 residents, and large facilities contain 21 or more residents. There's also the licensing category. The licensing categories go all the way from Class A, ambulatory residents who can get out of a fire on their own, all the way down to C, which are non-ambulatory residents who may or may not need help. What I want you guys to remember from all of this is that in all Class A facilities, the residents must be able to evacuate without any help or verbal or physical prompting. In all Class C facilities, at least one resident needs assistance or needs verbal or physical prompting to evacuate the facility. So it is important to know how your CBRF is licensed. Resident assessment requirements. Each new CBRF resident must be evaluated within 3 days of moving in to determine the resident's ability to evacuate the facility and the amount of assistance needed to evacuate. Providers must also reevaluate each resident's ability to respond to a fire alarm, at least annually, or when there has been a change in the resident's condition related to the ability to evacuate. It is the responsibility of the CBRF to assess each resident's evacuation needs. It is your responsibility to know when residents need assistance and what type of assistance might be needed. Evacuation times and fire safety requirements. If a resident can evacuate in under 2 minutes, the following things are needed: a smoke detection system, a sprinkler system only if required by the type of construction, number of floors, or class of the facility. If the resident takes 2 to 4 minutes to evacuate the facility, you need to have an externally monitored smoke detection system, vertical smoke separation between all floors, and rated stair enclosure. If the resident takes over 4 minutes to evacuate the facility, with or without employee assistance, there needs to be a sprinkler system, vertical smoke separation between all floors, rated stair enclosure, as well as 24-hour awake and qualified resident care staff. Other forms of evacuation. There is the point of rescue evacuation. If CBRF employees are unable to evacuate a resident safely, emergency service must evacuate the resident instead. The point of rescue for emergency services is the resident's bedroom. CBRF staff must instruct the resident to remain in his or her room and await evacuation by the fire department or other emergency personnel. In order to have a point of rescue, the CBRF must have a sprinkler system, notify the fire department in advance that you have a point of rescue, provide an up-to-date floor plan to the fire department identifying the location of the resident's room, have a vertical smoke separation between all floors, and have 24-hour awake qualified resident care staff. Area of refuge is a specially constructed room or area of refuge is another way to protect residents who cannot be evacuated safely by the CBRF staff. Residents who are unable to negotiate stairs are transported to a specially protected room while awaiting evacuation assistance from the fire department or emergency services. Not all CBRFs have rooms designated as areas of refuge. In order to have an area of refuge, it cannot be a resident's bedroom or room designated for private use of any resident or other occupant, employee, or licensee. The room must be constructed of fire-resistant materials that provide at least 1 hour protection. The doors must be tight-fitting with smoke and draft control, and they must have a fire protection rating of at least 45 minutes. The doors must be self-closing or automatic closing. There must be an exit, stairway, or fire escape that leads directly outside, and the door leading into the area of refuge must be unlocked at all times. There must be two-way communication from the area of refuge so that there is an ability to communicate with others. Each area of refuge must be large enough to accommodate persons based on assistive equipment. 30 by 48 inches for each person using a wheelchair, 30 by 36 inches for each person using a walker, cane, or crutch, and 30 by 24 inches for each person who does not use any assistive devices for walking. Horizontal evacuation. Depending on the facility structure and size, some facilities may use horizontal evacuation as the first step in resident evacuation. The ability to use horizontal evacuation depends on the construction of the building, including the presence of smoke and fire barriers. An example of horizontal evacuation would basically be, let's say I work here in the ICU and there's been a fire. And instead of exiting the building with our patients, what we would do is we would go right next door to, say, the OR. And in between the ICU and the OR is a smoke door, separation door with at least 60-minute rating, and a smoke wall. Okay? Maintenance and location of exits. There are specific requirements for the location and maintenance of exits in CBRF. Any licensed CBRF has met DHS 83 exit requirements. If all the residents are ambulatory, the CBRF must maintain a cleared pathway from all exterior doors used in an emergency to a public way or a safe distance away from the building. For facilities serving semi-ambulatory and non-ambulatory residents, the CBRF must maintain a cleared, hard surface, barrier-free walkway to a public way or a safe distance away from the building for at least 2 primary exits. All other required exits must have at least a cleared pathway maintained. An exit door or walkway to a cleared driveway leading away from the CBRF also meets this requirement. The CBRF Emergency and Disaster Plan. Each facility emergency plan must contain all of the following: procedures for the orderly evacuation of residents during an emergency or disaster, including use of areas of refuge. Procedures to follow when any resident refuses to follow evacuation or emergency procedures. The facility's response to a serious illness or accident. procedures to follow when a resident is missing, the facility's preparation for and response to severe weather, including tornado and flooding, a route to dry land when the CBRF is located in a floodplain, the location of an emergency shelter for residents and a means of transporting the residents to the shelter, procedures on how meals and medications will be provided to residents at the emergency shelter. Exit diagram. The diagram must identify exit routes from the floor, including internal horizontal exits when applicable, smoke compartments, which is a space within a building enclosed by smoke barriers on all sides, top and bottom. Not every building has a smoke compartment. A designated meeting place outside and away from the building when outside evacuation is part of the plan. Other fire safety requirements: posting emergency phone numbers. They should be posted by all telephones, such as 911 and poison control and non-emergency police and the fire department. All residents need to be informed of fire safety requirements before an incident occurs, and it must be documented in the residents' records within 72 hours. Smoking policies. Basically, there should be no smoking within CBRF facilities, and there should be some sort of outdoor smoking policy with a designated smoking area. Fire drills. Fire evacuation drills must be conducted at least quarterly with both employees and residents. At least once a year, a fire evacuation drill must be held that simulates the conditions during the usual sleeping hours. Some of the parameters for the annual drill include: the drill should be announced to the residents the day of the drill. Drills must be held in the evening, after dark, and before residents normally go to bed. The residents should be in their rooms at the time the alarm is activated. Residents should not be wearing hearing or vision aids, but may be dressed in daytime clothing. Only the lights that are normally on when the residents are sleeping may be on during the drill. There are 4 different types of fire drills. There are the walkthrough drills, and these are the type of drills that you would do with a new employee or a new resident. So you would set the alarms off and you would sort of walk them through the process. There are the announced drills, where you post it up on a board saying that today we're having a fire drill at 3 p.m. You set the alarm off, everybody is aware of it, and you would do as you would do if there were a real fire. There are the surprise drills, which are not announced, and as said before, these need to be during normal daytime wake hours, so you don't tell anybody about it. You basically set the alarms off and see how they do. And then there are the full response drills, which are coordinated with the local fire department. Now, the full response drills can be at the request of the facility if they don't think their plan is good enough, at the request of the fire department if they just want to see how well the residents can get out, or at the request of the state if they feel that there has been a problem with the fire and emergency plan. Okay, steps to save lives. This is how to respond in an emergency. You remember the acronym RACE. R standing for rescue, so you're going to want to remove those from immediate danger. A standing for activate the alarm and notify the fire department or call 911. Control is preventing the spread of fire, so you're going to want to contain the fire by basically closing a door. Evacuate all residents from the building, and then extinguish only if you're able to do so. Extinguishing is on the very bottom because it is not the most important step in saving lives during a fire. So only if you're able to do so may you extinguish that fire. Fire extinguishers. Now we're going to go through using a fire extinguisher. I'll talk you through it, and then I will show you actually how to do it. Another acronym is PASS. You are going to want to pull the pin, aim low or at the base of the fire, squeeze the lever slowly and evenly, and then sweep the nozzle from side to side. All right, let's get our fire extinguisher. All right, so we're going to start by pulling the pin, which it may be a little bit harder than that to get out the first time. You're going to want to aim low at the base of the fire, squeeze the trigger, and sweep the nozzle from side to side. Okay? So, some other things about fire extinguishers. If you can answer yes to all of the following questions, then you can use a fire extinguisher. What type of fire extinguisher is needed? And is it available? Can the fire be controlled? Have other staff, residents, and the fire department been notified? Have all residents been removed from the immediate area? Are you safe from any toxic smoke produced by the fire? Do you have a means of escape? And are you capable of lifting and using the fire extinguisher? Tips to remember in a fire smoke emergency. Feel the doors before opening. Touch the upper part of the door. Feel the doorknob lightly. If either feels hot to touch, don't open the door. People who are in bed when the alarm sounds should roll out of bed and crawl to the door to avoid sudden contact with heavy smoke and hot gases. If your clothes catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll. Meet other persons from the building at the pre-designated meeting place outside of the building. Make sure that you account for all residents and staff. Monitor residents to ensure none try to re-enter the building, and you should never re-enter a burning building. Work with the local fire department and emergency personnel. Severe weather. What I want you guys to remember is the difference between tornado watch and tornado warning. Tornado watch means that conditions are favorable for a tornado to occur. Tornado warning means that a tornado funnel has been sighted or is indicated by weather radar. If there is a danger of a tornado, all residents and staff should evacuate to a safe place in the facility. It is the CBRF's responsibility to designate that area. It is usually a basement or interior room with no windows. If that is not possible, the location should be on the lowest level away from windows. Everyone must remain in the designated space until all clear is given. Disaster evacuation drills. At least semi-annually, the facility is required to conduct evacuation drills so that residents and staff know what to do in the case of a tornado, flooding, or any other emergency or disaster. Disaster reporting to the department. Each CBRF must send a written report to the Division of Quality Assurance within 3 working days of either event. A catastrophe occurs resulting in damage to the facility, or the CBRF evacuates and temporarily relocates residents and employees for reasons other than a fire drill. Okay, some of the things that we've gone through today as a wrap-up. Understanding the nature of a fire, recognizing fire hazards. We learned about early warning systems such as smoke detectors, heat detectors, fire extinguishers, and sprinklers. Understanding the use of fire extinguishers, focusing on the evacuation needs of residents, following the CBRF emergency and disaster plan, and how to respond well in an emergency. So we would like to thank you for joining us today. We hope that you learned something and this was informative, and we hope from here on out you will follow the fire safety and emergency disaster plan.